What's up everyone and welcome to another Warframe video. So the latest update came out for Warframe and with it came some brand new augments. So let's take a look at the one I feel is the pick of the bunch, and that is Champion's Blessing for Trinity. The mod's pretty simple. Any health healed by Trinity when you cast Blessing gets converted into a crit chance buff. When it mentions health healing, it is the total percentage healed and will take into account not only your allies but also their pets as well. Power Strength does affect the percentage of crit gained per cast of Blessing, but the total max crit chance cannot be boosted past the 350% that the mod mentions. Which means that while Power Strength can help stack the crit chance bonus a bit quicker, I'd say it's definitely not worth pushing super high strength. The duration of the buff absolutely does scale with duration though, so that is definitely worth modding for. Something that's important to note is that because the augment applies a buff, rather than it being tied directly to having the ability active, is if something like a nullifier, or in this case in the footage, an acolyte dispels all your abilities, the buff remains, and then you can simply refresh it again when you recast your abilities. What this means is that you don't suddenly lose a huge chunk of crit chance when those enemies mess with your abilities. So before I go into what I think about it, quick look at the build I made around this mod. We're going to go with a quick thinking build and no vitality, because what that means is that each health point lost counts as a larger percentage compared to one with like umbral vitality. And since we're stacking multiple levels of damage reduction and we've got unlimited ability energy, a quick thinking tank is, well, rather ridiculous to be perfectly honest with you. You don't need much power strength to hit a decent amount of damage reduction on Blessing, so we only have Umbral Intensify on here. Then it's a case of as much duration as possible whilst cancelling out some of the range loss from Narrow-Minded with Stretch. The Helmet ability is replacing Well of Life, and I am using kind of the meta option unfortunately. I've got Eclipse on here for the extra damage reduction or the extra damage. However, Dispensary or Energized Munitions isn't actually a particularly bad option. One off-meta option would be Parasitic Armor, which sacrifices all your shield and gives you bonus armor, removing your shield gate. It's certainly not a bad option at higher level, but in lower level content, it made stacking tougher because that extra little bit of armor negates pretty much the low damage everything already kinda does. So what do I think of the augment? Is it fun and is it one that's worth building around? And my answer to that is, for Steel Path, yes, it's absolutely worth having a build for this augment. However, at lower level, absolutely not. Okay, Warframe's got this huge gap in damage outputs. Anything Star Chart related has so few enemies, and those enemies that are there die to a well-placed sneeze for the most part, and do almost no damage back. Anyone with a half-decent build, hell, even those with no build at all really, are able to survive pretty well for the most part, taking little to no damage, especially with how many people are running Gloom, or at the very least some form of self-healing. Heck, even the healing mods and the companions screw you over at that level. So since this augment relies on you taking damage, and with self-damage having been yeeted a couple of years ago, for the majority of the Star Chart and even into most arbitrations, unless you're going a decent time into the mission, it's actually fairly difficult to get this thing stacked to the point where it's worth a specific build around. Not that realistically you're going to need the extra damage anyway. Steel Path is a completely different story though. This build is a monumental blast, pardon the pun. You can very easily spend the first minute of the match standing in front of enemies to stack super quick. Once it's stacked, as long as you don't forget to refresh the timer, you can keep that max stack for the entirety of the game. Not that stacking later on in the mission is particularly difficult anyway. Especially since the timer has actually got slightly longer than your bless timer. So if you can see your bless timer getting low, drop a blessing, get not only that extra damage reduction, but refresh your crit chance at the same time. And this augment allows us to do some really silly things with some weapons. 100% crit Kuva Nukor with that enormous crit damage buff for demolishing entire groups of enemies. Red critting Brahmas. Anything that's got good crit just gets boosted to infinity and beyond with this thing. On some enemies in the footage, you can see me casually hitting 1.5 mil crits. I mean, there are some in here that are 4 mil crits, which is not something that you often see outside of a Banshee build. At the end of the video, stick around, I'm going to show you some footage of me just absolutely chunking the Acolytes with the Kuvazar. It is, frankly, rather glorious. This build is amazing though. We're using every single ability, even if we are helmeting off Well of Life for another buff, because we have Eclipse with damage reduction or the extra damage, EV for unlimited energy on the 2, we've got Link for more damage reduction, as well as acting as our replacement for Prime Sure-Footed, allowing us to use our extra boomy weapons like the Kuvazar, like I'm using in the footage, and then Bless for not only healing, but damage reduction and the crit chance boost from the augment. And what's even better is that it's not a selfish build whatsoever, giving energy, healing and damage reduction to the entire team at the same time. Well, what can I say? Battle Trin is back and better than ever. So I hope you enjoyed this short video on the new Trin augment. It's unfortunate that it's pretty much solely a steel path augment, however it is absolutely brilliant. I don't think there's much more satisfying than AoE red crit weapons throwing a ton of pretty coloured numbers absolutely everywhere. I lost track of time in this survival. Suddenly we were over an hour, about an hour and a half in before I realised, and that's how much I like this build. If you're someone that loves Trin, loves to be a team player as well, especially if you loved the old school battle Trin, you will love this build. Grab this augment, give it a go, I absolutely recommend it. If you enjoyed the video, feel free to hit that like button and to sub for more Warframe content, especially since we are moving closer and closer to the new war. But for now, have a great day, and I shall catch you in the next video.
Here you fight. Successful we will be.